Hey,
Hello.
how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Oh, quite good. Oh, fine.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I really like the proposal of the like flag value propagation or whatever we would call it. Um, like the distributed flag evaluation. It's actually something we had with several customers. So I would be happy if we can fix that.
Yeah, yeah. I only have briefly followed it, but I know one of the guys, Dynatrace, that was like his master's thesis is to look at that, and they're trying to like add feature flags in this like crazy distributed database that they're building. So
Mm,
that's kind of so it's like ultra high performance and it's really distributed and super important that the flags don't randomly change
I see.
throughout a query. So
Yeah.
yeah, so definitely an interesting topic.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Oh.
Hey everyone.
Right.
All right. Cool. All right. I guess we can probably kick it off in just a moment. Let me pull up the notes and see what we have. Oh, we don't even have a section here. Give me one moment. I will add it. On.
Oh, sorry, we do, but I didn't update the
Oh, you
date.
didn't change the date. Got it. Cool. Okay. Perfect. All right. So it looks like Todd's already added something. So I guess we can kick that off real quick. And then if anyone else has anything, please feel free to add some notes. I just have a couple quick updates that I can talk about after Todd gives his demo. But yeah.
He said he had to restart. Maybe we should
Yeah, I
just
guess we
wait.
can wait a sec. I think you may find this quite interesting. Like, well, actually, I showed the governance committee some of the stuff we were working with OTEL, but it's just hard to like get excited about because it's just an API. And so I talked to Pete about this, and he's like, everyone understands e-commerce sites, so I put together like a little like basic e-commerce demo app, and then Todd wired it into some of the event tracking stuff we were talking about, and I think that's the demo he's going to give is like this little e-commerce site that we've created and a couple of like little demo scenarios and hopefully we can use this one to test like the hotel event tracking spec and the or excuse me the open telemetry semantic convention stuff we're working on, also the tracking, and just have a nice kind of lightweight demo app that's full stack. So that was kind of the ideas there. I think Nicholas will maybe find this interesting, so we'll try to wait a sec. In the meantime, I did add a new support page. So on OpenFeature, I will link it in the notes, but basically for vendors that have at least one provider and have listed themselves as or has something in their docs, like their public facing docs, they can add themselves to this list. I'll add it to the chat real quick. But there we go. Also, if there's any like training or anything else that has been created, definitely feel free to add it. It's just kind of like add yourself if you're eligible, or you could nominate others, I guess. But the main requirement is that there's something like public facing that talks about how to work or how to get it working with a particular tool. So I'll add that to the notes. Hey Pete, good morning. Uh, uh, for some reason, Google Docs is like insanely slow to update. Like it feels like a really slow text editor. Let's see. Okay, we're just waiting for Nicholas. He was here for a second, had to reboot his computer because we're just about to go through that little demo. So just kind of briefly stalling. So if anyone has any other topics, feel free to jump in.
I guess just a really brief fun topic. Open feature common JavaScript core components hit 100,000 downloads yesterday for the first 100,000 weekly downloads yesterday for the first time. Which is pretty cool. Yeah. We hit 100,000 much faster than I thought, but I guess that's just the nature of NPM packages is the usage is at exponential growth. Okay, Nick's back. Okay, so I'm gonna do.
I gotta pull together the data for all those packages again.
Yeah, it's a little bit annoying because a lot of data, a lot of like package data is not very easy to access. Like NPM is super easy to access, but NuGet and Maven is a lot more annoying. It's possible, but you have to log in. It's not all public. It's a little bit frustrating, but it is what it is. Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick demo here, and this is mainly to demo really a lot of our spec'd out tracking stuff. So first, I implemented, based on the tracking spec, I implemented kind of a draft in the JavaScript SDK. That's open here at 1020. I put a pull request 1020. I put a link in the meeting notes, so take a look at that later if you want to. I guess I should also say thanks to Mike because he put together this like this thing called Toggle Shop, which is basically like a little demo e-commerce site that sells switches and toggles of various kinds. Real funny. That's wired up with the new tracking implementation I just mentioned. And I'll show you kind of how that works. And we're piping data through OpenTelemetry into Dynatrace. So I hope that at the end of this demo, you really understand the point of tracking and why we think it's a worthwhile kind of last addition to the OpenFeature API. Basically, here in this e-commerce site, you can buy various things. Obviously, I can add something to my cart. I can check out. I'll do that once just so you see how it works. And I can place an order. Cool. If I navigate back to the base, you can see kind of the page again. We're generating a new user session every time the page loads. And we have one feature flag. And all this feature flag does is control the presence of this banner. So it's just a Boolean feature flag that shows this banner or not. And every time we load the page, like I said, we generate kind of a fake user session. And then we can go ahead and make purchases all by this network switch. And you can see in this case, my user saw the banner. And I'll just do, just make that stuff. I'll just do another purchase here. There we go. So I did one purchase with, one purchase where the user saw the banner and one purchase where the user didn't see the banner. I'll really quickly go through the code. This is the landing page essentially where the banner is shown. You can see we have a hook here. And in this hook, all we're doing is firing up a whole bunch of basically data that comes from the flag evaluation. And it uses the OpenTelemetry standard conventions that we kind of helped craft. And these are just being ingested by Dynatrace actually via OTLP. So basically just using open standards, OpenTelemetry, open standards to get data into Dynatrace in this case, but it could be any backend. It doesn't have to be Dynatrace. So the hook is just adding that. And then kind of the new stuff here is the track. So we have an OFREP provider here. Hopefully everybody knows what OFREP is. It's just our standard for doing feature flag evaluations, conforming to a particular Swagger API. But the interesting thing here is we've extended the OFREP provider and added this track method. So this is again defined in the new SDK, the new draft SDK I mentioned earlier. And all we're doing in this provider, we're just extending the existing one and we're adding a track method that again does pretty similar stuff to what I just showed you happen in the hooks. We basically fire this data up, and it's eventually ingested via OTLP and OpenTelemetry standards into Dynatrace. So basically, when you view the page, a feature flag is evaluated, and then when you check out, we call this tracking event. So that's kind of the whole story. And these are linked together by this feature flag context key, which is essentially the targeting key. So basically we have feature flag evaluations, and then at a totally different point in the application, usage lifecycle, we have a track event that corresponds to when the user makes an order, and those are linked together with the user's session, which is what we put in the targeting key. Now, where this all comes together and is really cool is in the back end. So in Dynatrace, you can see, here's me fetching all of our feature flag evaluations. So you can see the user's session. That's what this UUID is. You can see the feature flag evaluation and the variant we got. So the variant is false, it's a static evaluation. You can see that with this query. There's another query here for the track event. So if I run this, you can see all the recent track events. So in here, we see basically the value of the cart, $49.99 in this case. And we can see, again, the same context key. So this should match some of the context keys from the previous query. So the magic happens when you kind of join these together. So I have a third query here that looks at all the evaluations, and then looks at all the tracking events, and then joins them on the user context key. So joins them on the user session, and then I summarize them with some interesting data here. So basically I do a count. I also get the average basket size by looking at the tracking value for all of this user's purchases, or sorry, for all the purchases by this particular variant. And that's the last thing to mention, is that I'm grouping these by variant. So what this allows us to do is say, okay, people who saw the feature flag in false mode, as in no banner, there was 14 impressions and the average basket size was $28. People who saw the variant true, as in they saw the banner, there's 34 impressions and the average basket size is $230. So this is basically tying together the whole thing, right? We're showing evaluations by variant, and then making we'd hypothetically be making some business assertion based on this ahead of time, and this would be confirming the assertion that like our banner increases our average basket size. So that's the whole story. Then, and the important thing here to kind of get back to is this whole track call happens totally out of band of the feature flag evaluation, and this is the thing that sometimes is confusing to people. So it has a lot of the same data as the feature flag evaluation. We have the user, we have any other relevant context, but at the end of the day, it's a different HTTP transaction. It's a completely different thing than the feature flag evaluation. And so then we tie it together in the end with this user session, so we can say, yeah, users who see the banner spend more money. That's essentially the whole kind of idea. And you can see this relies a lot on like a powerful backend to kind of be able to take all this data and link it together and actually make some business assertions around it. But we also need the levers and knobs in the OpenFeature SDK to do this kind of thing. So I guess that's it. That's the demo. Any questions or comments?
Yeah,
Liren?
yes, yeah, looks great.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I can't take all the credit for it because Mike helped a lot.
Yeah, basically, I was going to ask if it's going to use for impression, and it's exactly what you showed. Regarding a little bit implementation, when there is use of caching sometimes at SDKs. When cache is used, sometimes the evaluation does not even go to the server request. So when cache is used, commonly, for example, at Thomas implementation at Go Feature Flag, we use batch batching of the request and send the tracking event as a batch event every some time, and not a single track because it used cache. So sometimes the caching go together with batch evaluation. And my question is this supporting batching request?
Yeah, I think so. So this is a really basic implementation. So this is for the provider, like I said, it has this track method and it just fires it every single time. But your provider could easily be batching these and flushing them. There's nothing that would stop you from like basically every time your provider gets this track, you could note the context key, put it into some memory somewhere, and then batch it, and then on provider shutdown, you could flush that kind of thing. So I think basically we want to deal with like facts, basically, like essentially every time the track is called, we give you we call this on your provider, but you could implement whatever batching, caching you want on the provider here with the interfaces we have. Again, that's not what you're seeing here. We're immediately sending this to the server, but there's no need to do that. I think we have all the details you need. We have the context, so this has all the user information, the occurrence details. This is the information about the particular tracking event. You could store those and flush them periodically, however you want.
Yeah, specifically this tracking, the body is not a list. It's just one event. So if I aggregate 10 events, I will need 10 different track events.
Yeah, so this is the part that's not official. This API, this is just like something we implemented locally. We're not speccing any of this out. The only thing we're speccing out is basically this. So you could call whatever endpoint you want or not. Like I said, you could just cache this all locally. This implementation here, this part, this is just hypothetical. I'm sure we wouldn't want to do a request per track. This is just for the purposes of this demo. The API we're defining is just this method, basically, this track method, and then it's up to the provider to do whatever they want with that data.
Isn't the requests under OFREP are in the spec of it?
So yeah, we basically did a really hacky extension of OFREP just for the purposes of this demo. This isn't going to be an official part of OFREP, at least at this point. I mean, maybe later we will, and I'm sure if we do that, we'll support batching. But OFREP is not going to, like the tracking spec as it is, has no bearing on OFREP. Like I said, this is just for the purposes of this demo. We happen to use the OFREP endpoint. It was just easy for us to implement that way.
Maybe it's worth it's just calling that little hacky endpoint something different, just to avoid people getting confused and thinking that's part of the work, that's part of the spec.
Yeah, you're probably right. When we push this up, like at some point, Mike and I will push this stuff up, and we can probably put it under a different endpoint.
Wait, how is this called? Can you go to where the track method is called?
So yeah, this is just this is all done with Next.js. So this is a client component, and in here we just have an event handler, and it just calls client.track. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So this calls track on the client, which just like all of our other abstractions eventually calls the provider.
Okay. Yeah, because like when you were looking at the implementation, it had that context stuff, and I was thinking that the caller had to like get that from somewhere and put it in there, but that's like done internally inside the provider.
Yeah, just like most of the other stuff in server, the context is more static. Sorry, client, the context is more static. On the server, your track method can take an optional valuation context, because it's the same kind of thing, the dynamic context versus static context stuff.
I think someone already was asking about this in another conversation about this tracking work, but what at the moment the magic, like you said, happens with the joining of these two things that happen kind of totally separately, and you're using the context key, which is great which works if someone's logged in, or if the context key is a session. But if someone's just using has there been a discussion of just like creating a totally separate, just an internally generated kind of session key that that doesn't rely on someone not using a so okay, so the coffee hasn't kicked in yet. Let me try this again. When sometimes for non-logged in feature flagging, like on a marketing site, I've done things where I've just used like a context key of like anonymous or something because I don't know who the user is, and but I still would want to be able to track the behavior of those people. And like, a lot of analytics things have this kind of idea of like an anonymous key, and then like when you figure out who someone actually is, you kind of bind it back to the actual user once they've kind of identified themselves. But has there been any talk about maybe not using the feature flag context key as also the way of kind of sewing these two things together?
There has, and I definitely think it's super important. My take is, that's why these methods, or that's why the track method in the server, and that's why the track method in the provider have the evaluation context, because you can actually join on anything here. Like we picked the targeting key, but if you had the user's email, you could join on that. If you had the user's browser, you could join on that, and you have all those details. So essentially anything that you have in the context, you can join on. I think that's actually more important than being able to auto-generate something. I mean, you could auto-generate whatever you want, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think we want the data in the system, and then we want to be able to ask whatever questions we want of the system after the fact, even if we didn't put it when the app was coded.
Yeah, and I guess it's like a responsibility of the provider to decide how to, like, what extra kind of contexty things to inject in when it actually does the tracking.
Yeah, I mean, how much you send the system, yeah, and what you filter out. Yeah, I think we want to give maximum flexibility there, but I think to your point, it's absolutely important to be able to really join across anything. Like we've joined across the user session, but I think you could also ask other interesting questions.
Yeah. It's very cool.
Cool. Yeah, eventually we'll push this up. That's really all I have for this. Any other questions before we move on?
Cool. Yeah.
All right.
I have one.
I was going to
sort of-
complain about some of the naming stuff there, but you mentioned that's all internal.
Yeah.
Just like the casting.
Yeah. This is all internal. If you have nitpicks about these names, though, please say so in the PR, because these are the things that we expect. So
I'm
any
sure
of the
we'll fight
parameter
over it.
names, yeah, those are in the spec.
My nitpick would be occurrence key is like, I think just everyone calls these event names.
My
Like
trouble with event is that we use event already highly, so I was trying to like namespace
Yeah.
things a bit, but I yeah, I mean, we don't have to stick with occurrence. That's something I'd like to sync on. So if you have opinions on that, please, I totally be willing to change this. This is just my first stab at it.
And we're not doing anything with like, so almost all the kind of analytics things I've used have kind of de facto have adopted like kind of like the segments API as kind of a de facto standard. And normally it's like a track call and an identify call or an identity call. I can never remember which one it is. And we're just doing track. We're not doing any an identity thing that kind of like does the binding of the identities.
No, yeah, we don't have any plans for that, but I think that
Well, that's kind of what our context is, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. There's nothing new, but that's basically what
Yeah.
set context more or less is.
We could maybe have a helper too that just like set identity or whatever, just sets the targeting key behind the scenes or merges it with existing context or something potentially.
Yeah, I guess you guys are both right. Yeah, like set context is essentially the like open feature version of identify.
Ish, yeah, it's a little bit maybe slightly confusing, and set right now overrides the existing context. So we were talking about probably needing to have a merge, and also maybe adding like a React hook to make it slightly easier, for React at least. But
Yeah.
it's technically possible now. It's just maybe a little bit subtle to users.
Yeah.
But yeah, naming is important. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I'd love to get out of the spec discussion is like settling on terminology.
Have you looked at all at how hard it is to build a segment integration? Because that would be also really interesting to demo.
I looked heavily at segment when I was doing the tracking spec because it's a de facto standard. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's more than a de facto standard. It's actually a standard. Or at least they have a specification. So yeah, I think it's totally possible. I basically was kind of designing the API as it is so far with that in mind. I haven't actually set up a segment integration, but yeah, this was all designed with segments specifically in mind.
Yeah.
And I think it's totally possible.
I think that would definitely be a really good thing to demo, is just like, you don't have to do anything. Like if you've already got segment in place for your, your shopping cart analytics, you just need to configure it to also send stuff to OpenFeature, and ta-da, it all just magically kind of flows through. This is, I think, a good selling point for a lot of people.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. Yeah, and then thanks, I guess, Pete, for the original idea with the e-commerce. I think it makes it way easier to show these concepts. This one right now is actually under just my own private like GitHub, so we'll clean it up. It's all self-contained. It's not running any other external containers or anything, so it's actually quite nice and lightweight to run. What's up? Todd's laughing now. It's got me concerned here.
Jonathan asked how much AI was used to generate.
Oh, a lot.
some of
Actually,
those
it's
designs.
amazing how powerful those things are. I was just trying out that whatever V0 thing from Vercel, and it generated like 80% of it.
Yeah,
And it
it's
came
pretty
up with a
cool.
lot of like the ridiculous over the top like text too. So I just had to change it to Toggle Shop, but it came up with like Tech Town or something like that. So if you see any references there, that's the history behind it. And actually, probably the hardest part of that whole project was finding royalty-free images that I could use for the products. So
I'm very impressed you resisted the urge to generate a like generic, the like typical AI generated
I
image.
tried. They were just brutally bad, so I had
Yeah.
to come up with our stuff. But yeah, I suppose if
If
go
anyone
ahead.
uses VS Code day to day and you haven't tried Cursor yet, like do yourself a favor and give it a go.
Yeah, I saw you guys did a blog on like the prompting stuff. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I suppose if that's the one value that AI brings, it makes it easy to write demo apps, then I guess it's a net positive. At any rate, yeah. So we'll try to have that somewhere available. I think it's nice. It's a lot smaller, I guess, than the other demo app that we have currently in terms of just like surface area. So it's easier to kind of see, where we're doing stuff. The goal is to include the OTel semantic convention stuff we're talking about in here, so we can test that. And then also the tracking pieces, and then hopefully in the relatively near future, some of the code generation stuff. So this will be a nice way to test out a lot of the different initiatives we have going on right now. So yeah, look forward to that. I'll post it in Slack once it's available, just kind of cleaning up a few things and writing docs and whatnot, and then it should be live. The only other thing that I have is I did write a quick blog post talking about KubeCon. It's live on the website now. It's the latest blog. So if you could take a look at it and feel free to share. And I think Todd put something on some of the social platforms too. So if you're active or willing to log in to Twitter or LinkedIn, if you could go ahead and like reshare it or like it or whatever, that would be appreciated. And that's basically it for our list right now. Does anyone else have any topics they'd like to discuss? Cool. All right, I guess we can wrap up. I will, like I said, post as soon as that demo app is available, and feel free to, hack around on it, provide feedback, whatever you need. Definitely curious to see how we can, or what it will take to get that tracking stuff across the finish line. There seems to be quite a bit of interest in that. So that will be, I think, a priority over the next week or so. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a nice day. Talk to you later. Bye.
You.